Welcome everybody to the Truth BrandMapp South African Loyalty White Paper webinar. We're super excited to reveal the white paper today. So straight away, I'm going to actually show you the physical copy. It's absolutely beautiful, but more importantly, it's full of the most incredible insights about the loyalty industry in South Africa. So it is our 7th edition, and I think quite possibly the most special edition, but I say that every year, so I'm trying not to be too biased. I do have 2 special guests who are going to join me in the webinar today. Just before we get into that, I just want to share with you this process. We're going to go through main insights and then very happily at the end answer any Q&A. So please fill any questions you might have in the Q&A box and we'll answer them at the end. So I'm going to ask my guests on today's webinar to turn on their cameras. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO of Truth and I'm the author of the white paper, but I couldn't write a single word on this white paper without the assistance of Brandon and Nick. So Brandon is the director of storytelling of BrandMapp, or Y5, and I think many of you have met Brandon before on our webinars about the white paper. So thanks for joining us, Brandon.
Morning.
And then Nick Bednall, some of you may know Nick as one of our judges on the South African Loyalty Awards, but he's also the Chief Commercial Officer of Moya App, and I'll explain the role of Moya App in a short while. So absolutely fabulous to have you as well, Nick. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, everyone.
So what I want to just quickly take you through is the white paper is brought to you every year. As I said, it's the 7th edition by Truth BrandMapp. Those of you who don't know Truth, we're a consultancy in loyalty programs, so we love talking about loyalty all day long to anyone who's prepared to listen. So thank you for joining us to listen today. And then the study is from the company called Y5, but it's called BrandMapp. And obviously Brandon can tell you more about it if it comes up, but it's an annual study that we have the privilege of being able to insert some questions and use the questions through this annual study of 33,000 South Africans. The average household income is more than 10,000 Rand a month, so it's economically active South Africans. So whilst this might only be 30% of South African population in population terms, it does actually represent 100% of the tax-paying base and 80% of consumer spend. But for the first time, we've managed to replicate the study with the Moya app research capability, and hence why Nick's joining us today. And through the Moya app research, we've surveyed 9,000 South Africans whose household income is 10,000 Rand or less. So now we're able to capture the whole of the South African market. And thank you to the clever research folks. They've managed to check the accuracy of the studies. So what we have here is a really strong view of the South African marketplace. So that's the team behind the white paper. What I want to just take you through now is how today will run. So we have pulled out 5 major insights, which will be the discussion points between myself, Brandon, and Nick. The detailed results, though, are obviously in the white paper itself. So this will be available straight after the webinar on the Truth homepage, truth.co.za. What is in the white paper, which we may not cover in every page today, is obviously the overall usage that we see year on year. We've got the history now of the 7th edition, so that we've got year on year tracking of that usage of South Africans with loyalty programs. There's a whole section on the motivation of South Africans around loyalty programs. We also then dig into what do consumers want from loyalty programs. Then obviously there's the leaderboards, so to speak, of brands and their performance in terms of most used, but also the ones that South Africans claim they can't live without. And then the final section of the white paper covers all of the study from Moya app. So it's a separate section, it's not integrated throughout the whole paper. And then in the conclusion, we actually take a different angle as well, which Brandon's going to talk about, to have a look at that great loyalty term called personalization. So as I said, we're not going to page turn every graph as we've done in the past. I think everyone's more than capable of downloading the white paper and being able to read it themselves, but we will do that next week if anybody is interested. So every slide will be on the screen and we'll talk you through the insights. Okay, so I think without any further ado, I want to get straight into the discussion. So we're going to start actually with, I know this question is Brandon's favorite question of the whole study. So I'm going to start off and ask Brandon straight up. So we do ask the question, obviously, which loyalty programs do you use? And then we introduced a few years ago, which loyalty program can you not live without, which really, really teases out some fabulous insights. But apart from that as an insight in its own right, what is it about this year's results that have really interested you?
So, okay, so the reason why the most important, or the way it actually works, is you select all of the programs that you're a member of. And then, and the average person this year, I think, is ticking, I can't even remember what it is, 8 or something like that. It's
9.2.
9. Yeah. So, loyalty usership has got, it's way past the hygiene factor. We're like well into the, everyone expects it kind of part of the consumer journey. But it's quite difficult when you've got these massive programs that have huge footprints to try and work out, which ones are actually doing a better job. So that's really, I think, as we've evolved over the last 7 years, we've been trying to ask better questions so that we can get closer and closer to that answer, who's doing a slightly better job and why. And then importantly, just because something is the most used, is it necessarily the most important, or is it how valuable? Okay, so that's why it was super important. And you can only choose one. Okay, so that was why it was fun. We thought it'd be fun the first year. It turned out to be hell of important, I think. So maybe have you got the actual result for this year? So what we've seen, what we saw in the first year that we did it, was that where the mass retailer programs obviously always win the most used, the moment you put this lens on of like, what's the one you couldn't live without, or what's the way we actually ask the question is, if you could only keep one of these, which one would it be? So, we call that most loved or most valued, all sorts of things, but you can only keep one. What is it? And FNB eBucks has been top of the pile ever since we started asking the questions. More interesting is that suddenly you see all of the financial programs coming up. Okay, so although I've got 9 different cards in my wallet, when it comes to the crunch and you say you can only keep one, it's a heck of a lot of people say it's the one that's connected to my financial program, and that's clearly because it's like real money in the bank, literally. The same pattern emerged this year. Interestingly, Standard Bank and Vitality, the top of this pie has always been a really, really closely, it's a close contest between those top 4. Investec is a great example of why this metric's cool, because obviously they've got incredibly few people who are members of Investec Rewards. They're never going to be recognized as a footprint program. But it's nice to see something like that rising really to the top of the pile when you ask this question. I think just fascinating. 2 things fascinating. First of all, that it's still the financial programs. Look where Capitec in a year enters, right? So it's entering the fray in 7th place. In some pretty rarefied air. The moment you get 20% of your people or more saying you're the most important program, I think you're doing something right. And then the other really interesting one is that Checkers comes in and actually nips Pick and Pay. For the big retail program, it's like, wow, whatever they're doing something really right.
Great. Yeah. So as you say, I think that trend of it always being dominated by financial services, we've seen every single year, and that's absolutely no different whatsoever. But interestingly, when we chat to Nick later, we do see a little bit of mix in the mass market data. So that's where it gets more exciting. But a new leaderboard this year versus what we've seen in the last few years. So
then the next thing was why, right? So you asked we've had this conversation often over the years, like, but why, and there's the obvious reason is because it's literally money in your pocket. But we thought, let's try and add a little slant this year. So, the disclaimer here is Amanda didn't even know that we were going to put this question in. But we thought, actually, and I'll give kudos to a colleague of ours, Grant Fraser, who always loves to question our work and ask us why we don't do things. And he said, why don't you have a question about personalization and stuff? Because, and he went on this rant about how people, his loyalty programs weren't giving him relevant offers. So what we did was we took exactly the same metric, right? So you all of the programs you ticked, and we gave you that list. So the average person is now sitting with a list of between 8 and 10 programs. And we asked a simple question, which was, which of these programs offer you benefits that are relevant and personalized? That's how we asked the question. Okay, so super simple, super interesting. You could tick as many as you wanted. So now suddenly you see obviously the percentages go up quite dramatically. But look who are still top of the pile. It's Discovery and Standard Bank and Investec and FNB and Capitec. And so this is what it is. I think we've solved a bit of a problem, is that there's something about the words personalized and relevant offers that people are attaching much more strongly to these financial programs, and not quite as strongly to the others. Although again, look at where Checkers comes in, So again, they're doing something properly right, and I think it totally explains why they've jumped in so highly. So yeah, for me, simple question answered. One of the main reasons why people are choosing these programs as their favorites is because they genuinely are being made offers that in the consumer's head are either relevant or personalized, or probably both.
When I wrote the white paper and obviously poring over the data, what we actually looked at was the correlation between the left-hand graph and then the most used, as you say, the footprints, the most used. And we saw a 40% correlation in the top 10 between the personalized and most used. But personalized results versus can't live without, we saw an 80% correlation. Yeah, wow. So a double impact in terms of it really matters to me, and I can't live without this program. So what I did want to just comment on, based on the first graph over loyalty programs South Africans can't live without, just to highlight the impact you said about, for example, Investec Rewards wouldn't have the footprint necessary to be the most used in the top 25. The other brands that make this list, but not the top 25 most used, so it's Investec Rewards, Snap and Save, British Airways Executive Club, Sanlam Reality, Mr. Price Money Insiders, and then the OK Count card. None of those make the most used, but are in the top 25 programs that you can't live without. So kudos to all brands, but also extra mention for those that wouldn't have made the most used top list. Yeah,
Amanda, can we say? I just want to make a point about Discovery quickly. We when you had the loyalty awards the other day, is it Celeste from Celeste Williams from Discovery was on stage very bravely in a room in a room full of loyalty experts, and it was kind of interesting because this work that we're showing it came out of field 2.5-3 months ago now. So obviously that the Discovery Gate hadn't happened yet, or let's call it Discovery Bank Gate hadn't happened. And there was a really spirited discussion around it, which I think is worth just making quick mention of. She made a really interesting point on that day, which was, there's going to be people who were upset with that whole Discovery Vitality program shift and this idea of you have to now join the bank. And she made a point of saying, you can get a free bank account. You don't have to, it's not going to cost you anything, blah, blah. So there were a whole lot of reasons. But the main thing that she said that stuck with me was, every time that there are these shifts in benefits that people love or care about, there's always going to be one thing taken away and 5 things added. And there are normally going to be more people who like the 5 things that have added than who are complaining about the one that's been taken away. Okay. I thought it was a really, really valid point, and it made me think of FNB when they had all that slow lounge stuff, the rules all changed, and we saw it make absolutely no impact in our data. That year didn't matter. So what's interesting about Vitality is I went back and I did all the cross-reference. And again, this is just in our data. Discovery will obviously have very accurate figures on this. But in our data, 60% of the people who said that Discovery is the program that is most vital to them are already Discovery Bank members. So the point about Discovery is, it's medical aid. It's the top edge of the medical aid pyramid in this country. They don't have a lot of members compared to like a pick and pay smart shopper, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're not a heck of a lot of members anyway. When I say not a heck of a lot, I mean, there's more than a million, but it's not 15, 18, 20 million. But the point is, you've got the small group of people, and the vast majority of the ones who really care about it are already Discovery Bank members. So I thought it was kind of interesting. It's we're probably going to be reading quite a lot more about that. I'm sure they're a tall poppy and they'll come under fire. But yeah, just thought it was interesting. It may not be that much of an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to another story. So,
this is your one, motivations.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just behind this, when we set up the questions for the white paper, I always discuss with Brandon how I would say over 50% of the discussions we have with executives trying to prove the value of loyalty programs. Is it worth it? It's a lot of money. It's a lot of effort. It's a long-term strategic play. Is it worth it? So that's where the discussion started. So Brandon, over to you for just positioning this.
So what I always wondered about loyalty was, it seemed to me that there was these split in the market, and I was purely basing it actually on personal, sort of a sample of one or a sample of me and my friends. But it seemed to me that that loyalty was always aiming at one of two mindsets, and I wasn't really sure who was getting it right and combining them and getting them in the right order. And the two mindsets, quite simply, are I'm already your damn customer, and I just want you to reward me, and I don't want to make a fuss about it. I don't want to have to do much. It's almost like I want to walk into the store and I want someone to go, "Here's your free ice cream," because you've walked into the store for the 10th time today. But I realized that that loyalty's become quite a sophisticated. It's a sophisticated world, the world that you work in with your clients, and trying to work out how to best squeeze value out of their loyalty spend in terms of what consumers want. There's a whole different thing going down, which is like the e-bucks thing. Like I'd rather earn myself a TV. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to measure. So you came up with the full list of measurements, and
So I've always said to Brandon, Brandon, customers aren't as easy to understand as that. It's not as simple as saying you want to walk into the store and here's your ice cream, or you want to build up your points, and if it's e-bucks or any other currency, and save up for a TV or a travel or an air flight. Not most, but certainly a lot of customers actually want both. And we never had any evidence to support this. So we managed to tease out some of these results. So what's the results show, and Brandon's going to talk through it in a little bit more, but what I say in the white paper, so you can read what's on the screen here, but I'm going to let Brandon talk about the cross correlation in a moment. But what is really important is, folks, you'll see the top two indicators here of I want to be instantly rewarded and I like to build up my points. But remember, these aren't mutually exclusive statements, and these aren't mutually exclusive customers. So Brandon mentioned e-bucks. So take e-bucks. I can be instantly rewarded with a whole heap of rewards, like a Starbucks coffee or a Kauai voucher or a one-day only voucher. And I can equally build up my points, my e-bucks, for a longer term play. So in that case, a customer like myself, I can benefit from both. And a lot of customers like to benefit from both. So whilst you and I have been teasing each other about this for a while, I'm delighted to see these results, because it's what brands actually have to respond to. Before I show you the table that Brandon's going to talk you through, one of the most amusing parts of this, right at the bottom, was I mostly use them because my partner tells me to. And when we split this by male, female, gender split, 5 times more males responded to that than females, which just reminded me of my household.
They're the ones who never knew that there were cards for major retailers. I also wanted to point out that the third one's really interesting. The idea of spending more to earn rewards. When we've done a bit of work for specific clients in the last couple of months on that, and it's really it's an interesting metric as well, that once you get into the sort of the rarefied air of people who are certainly not struggling, and there are a lot of consumers in South Africa who aren't struggling. There are a lot of top end consumers who are doing they're doing just fine. They're not like the majority of people in the country. And the idea that 34% of people would have the means to tick that. You know what I mean? Like, loyalty programs make me want to spend more to earn more. Geez, it's a little bit of a tick for like the loyalty world's done a good job in changing that behavior, you know, or in encouraging that behavior.
And I come on to that in a moment. Also on this slide, like, I hate it when points expire. I mean, we talk about this all the time, and I really want all of our clients to listen to this, because those expiring of points is such a headache. And then last but not least here, I mostly use them to claim in-store special offers. That's, for example, Checkers have come into the market with that as their main offering. So it's right up there. Okay, so take a look at this.
Okay, so so if the question was like, who's right, Amanda or Brandon? So I just always thought that it would be a little bit more of a binary polarity. You know, I thought it would probably be like a 40-40 and 20 in the middle, or even more, between people who want the build, people who want the instant reward. So what we've done here is we've literally just cross-referenced. So we've stacked the questions across the questions, so you can see the percentage of people who said one of those things along the top, what percentage of them also said one of the other things, okay? So if you look along the first column, people who said, I want to be instantly rewarded for my loyalty to a brand, 44% of them also said, I like to build up big points for big rewards. You know? And if you look at the next column, 50% of people who said, I like to build up for big rewards also said, I want to be instantly rewarded for my loyalty to a brand. So the way this actually works out, if I drew it in a nice little linear block for you, what you'd see is that actually it's about 15% of people at the bottom end, not the bottom end, on the one side, who only care about building up for big rewards, and about 16% way on the other side who only care about building up. And everybody else in the middle actually wants to do both. So I guess the point is, if you are a very sophisticated program, and if you have the ability to do something very, very specific to make those two ends happy, and if you can identify, for example, that they're like really, really valuable customers, then absolutely go ahead and do it. But you're not going to win by having one of those two strategies across the entire consumer base, because the vast majority of people actually just demand a hell of a lot more out of loyalty now than, you know, they want it all. They want it all. Yeah.
And what we saw is those customers who want both are more likely to be female, more likely to be using the retail programs, and more likely to want everything in the benefit set. So in the white paper, we talk through the benefit set of cash from points, and you can imagine, you've seen it every year, the long list of benefits from a loyalty program, and they want all of it, not just one or two of them. So they know how to navigate their life via with a loyalty program.
And have a look at also the other obvious insight from this is, if you're trying to quantify how important it is to understand what's going to piss off your consumers, look at I hate it when points expire correlating to I like to build up big points. Okay, at 62%, so it's over indexing. And the same thing applies the other way around. So 49% of people who said I like to build up points for big rewards say I hate it when points expire. So in that instance, probably would be a good idea to identify those consumers who are the ones who think it's really important to build up big points. That's why they're with you. And just make damn sure that you don't let them down by letting those points expire. You know, it's a tactical thought, and I know we're supposed to be more strategic. You're the tactical person, but it looks to me like that's critical. You know what I mean? Like, find out who those people are, identify them, and overcompensate, calm them every day to tell them. You know,
without question, it's the most irritating thing when points are expiring. It's especially if you're trying to build it up. Great.
So that's my part of motivation, but yours is more this stuff. How does it influence my behavior? Yeah.
And this is sort of bordering discussion. So many of you have heard us talk about it. If you're looking at a business case and you want to see the incrementality of loyalty investment and the incrementality in behavioral change, we typically put a business case together that will say, on a good day, 6%, but on average about 4% incremental revenue because of the loyalty program. So you can't put like-for-like growth or like-for-like stats or inflation or store footprint growth in there. It's over and above that. But these stats are phenomenal. So, 84% of those customers who are saying they use loyalty programs say it does influence where I shop. 56% the products I buy, 53% where I buy fuel, 49% where I bank, and then it starts to drop off slightly to the less sort of mission critical, but 34% the places I eat. And then this year we included how I travel and where I buy insurance. So you see also 34% how I travel, and then insurance less so. So we popped that in because there are some really big insurance programs in the marketplace. These stats are absolutely phenomenal, and we've stress tested them year on year, and they still remain as relevant. So yeah, really great to see, and it backs up the strategic approach that we use.
How do you that fuel, Amanda, the fuel one? I think we only actually put it in for the first time about 4 years ago, and it was substantially lower. Is that still quite a big area of interest in the loyalty space, right? I mean, everyone's fighting in those forecourts.
For sure. And then obviously we can't disclose this here because it's been done confidentially for clients, but where we've taken your data and you've run the data with a lens of one of the banking brands that has a fuel partner, or the retail brand that has a fuel partner, we've seen with the lens of those clients, the where I buy fuel very heavily, and like it's important. So it matters as a partner to either the banking brand, or say, we've got retail brands who have fuel partners. So without question, it matters. Yeah.
I wonder if it's
and we've seen a year of loyalty warfare on the forecourts. I mean, everybody's been doing exciting things, so it's great.
It feels that the only thing I wanted to share about that is it's always felt to me like it's what I call a Colgate impact. One of the best businesses in the world to be in has to be toothpaste, because like just about everybody uses it. And the thing about these loyalty programs, why I think it's a totally personal opinion, is that it's not backed up by fact necessarily, but I imagine that the reason for the financial programs being as popular is that for a highly educated consumer who knows that they have to pull out their credit card, well, not they have to, they're going to pull out their credit card and pay. And if they're simply rewarded for normal behavior, something that they have to do, that's a really good rewards program, right? And fuel, if you drive, is something you just blooming have to do, and it's now becoming a luxury item, a proper luxury item.
But you can choose which forecourt to go to. So
absolutely,
where I live, I've got 3 forecourts that are equally close to me. I can choose any one of the 3, and I choose the one that makes sense to me from a loyalty point of view. I'm not getting any great buzz from the actual fuel itself. So I'm not a petrol head. So I don't get excited by the different fuel necessarily. Some people would, but the loyalty has an impact.
Loyalty has an impact,
for sure. Otherwise, these guys are too clever. They wouldn't be doing this. Okay, I'm going to turn the question on you. This is quite a short discussion, but it's so important. Like every year, it's probably one of the first things I go and look at to see if it's changed. But Brandon, are we getting digital yet?
I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. No. So we've asked this question in so many different ways over the years. We've actually changed the wording almost every year, mainly to try and shift the needle. And it just blooming never shifts. So, how do you prefer to interact with your loyalty program? How do you prefer to identify yourself? How do you prefer to use which of these it doesn't matter how we ask it. The answer remains the same. The vast majority of people still look at swiping a card as being, the way that they want to functionally use loyalty. Scanning and apps obviously got up over the years. Providing a cell number has increased as various programs have grown, and also as the middle class and up has expanded. I think younger consumers, funny enough, are more comfortable with a cell number. The digital card we put in this year to try and get a mirror point for the swiping a card. Like, are people talking about that as well? No, it's a different thing. So is using a digital wallet. So like bottom line, like people still want cards. So my theory on this, I'll tell you the story very quickly. I think in the same way that pulling out the right bank card to pay for dinner is quite cool. And there's some evidence to show that there are some bank cards in South Africa right now that as people climb up the ladder and join the continuum of wealth, there are some cards that are more impressive than others. I won't say which banks, but I think the same thing applies to loyalty and physical card. It's like there's something quite cool. It's like a social identifier, It's like I've got these cards in my wallet, and when I put it out at the till, I'm like, yes, I am a member. I think there's an aspect of that to it. It's like it's a physical, tangible connection between me and something that makes me feel important as a consumer. And I mean, clearly you can't argue with the result. Do you know what I mean? It's like that is unequivocal.
Every year it's like this, and every year, particularly last year, I was convinced it was going to change after the couple of years of lockdown and COVID and touchless everything. And nope, it's still there. So
it's still there.
The companies that are producing plastic cards or whatever kind of card, recyclable cards, you're still in business.
So I mean, I guess what's interesting about that is coming up now, because in the mass market, I think there's a very different result here.
It's not so different at the top. We'll see it now. I'm going to ask Nick that now, but you'll see a difference in the second, third, fourth. Which is lovely. It's great to see. So let's do that. Let's shift tact a bit. Thanks, Brandon. The insights are fantastic. I could listen to you all day. It's always fantastic. So there's a human behind these data points, and it's Brandon. So great. So Nick, welcome to being part of the white paper. It's a real welcome addition to the audience, because I know, the mass market is so critical that we understand what's happening in the loyalty space. And the Moya app has been able to, the research that your team has done has been able to give us that insight. So from your point of view, what are those insights? What stands out for you?
Well, thanks for involving us, and we're delighted to bring insight to everyone in what's actually happening in the mass market. So this is a great opportunity for everyone to see what the mass market actually do, and what they really believe in, and what their behavior is as a result of loyalty programs. The thing that stands out is probably that in the mass market, 82% of people surveyed actually are part of a loyalty program, compared to the 10,000 household income and up. So the traditional lens that has been applied by the white paper for the last 7 years. So that, that's nearly a factor of 10% more. And obviously the reason for that, as we know, is that the well-heeled love a bargain, but the less fortunate really need it. So, you straight away see that the mass market are incredibly sophisticated at understanding where to find value. And the reason for that is because they are focused on finding value. It is a decision that affects everything that they do every day. And so they're probably amongst the most astute shoppers out there of knowing where to find value. And here is your top line result that proves that. So that's the first thing that comes out. For me, I think the other thing that comes out is that in the traditional space, or the upper income space, we've seen the impact of loyalty programs in terms of the role of where I shop and what products I buy, and perhaps less so where I bank. But here in the mass market, not surprisingly, where I shop is number one, as we've seen and I would expect. But the number two being a bank is what we call the Capitec effect. And really that's because Capitec have come in and helped the mass market effectively get a second payday by using the Live Better program to guide how they use their card, and then build up enough points so that they actually get the second payday. And there's the impact right there. And that's, for me, a really, really interesting insight. And then third being the products that I buy. So to have a bank perform and change behavior so quickly is really interesting to me. And related to an earlier point, you were talking about the prevalence of card. In the world of trying to change a cash behavior, card has been the most successful instrument in banking, right? So card really drives banking's change of behavior from cash into banking. And as much as we'd like to believe digital will be the way, right now card is the dominant way of doing that. And same with loyalty. it's the legacy of the power of card. And I agree with Brandon that that is the prevailing mechanism of delivering either a banking product or a loyalty product. But in a continuum of card to digital, we're seeing digital rise to be more and more important. And here again, in the mass market, what you see is the mass market is happy to use the cell phone number as an identifier. Yeah. I think it shows two things. Mm-hmm. One, certainly with Moya, you get quite a strong younger audience. And when I say younger, I mean 20 to 35. They're more digitally savvy, they're more smartphone users. But equally, perhaps less of the fear around cell phone as a potential source of spamming, and more of an interest in, if I identify myself, what value can I get? And so they're perfectly willing to give up their cell phone number to get that value. Yeah. So very, very interesting. Yeah. And, there again, look at the ID number at 23%. If I remember the previous study, for the slightly, for the better, the more financially well off, that was, I think, around 11%. So almost double, willingness to have an ID number.
11%.
Yeah. So those would be the top 3 insights that come to mind immediately.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Thank you. I think let's share the most used programs for the mass market, because I'm going to move into the penultimate part of the webinar, which is going through the brands. As I said earlier, it's sort of like a leaderboard. So I don't want to miss what's happening in the mass market off the Moya app data. So I think from your point of view, you've said some of this already, but we see ShopRite Extra Savings as
phenomenal results.
Yeah, like it's a new program, and it's miles ahead of number 2. So you've got, it's very significantly ahead of number 2, and then you've got Pick and Pay Smart Shopper as number 2, and then straight in there, Capitec Live Better. And what we've always seen in the BrandMapp results is it takes quite a few retail brands before the first non-retail brand comes into play in the most used programs, and we'll see that in a moment. I'll get the results up in a moment. Whereas in this marketplace, Capitec have come straight in there at number 3. So
yes, I mean, 2 incredible results. If you compare Clicks and Pick and Pay as relatively mature, long-running programs, many, many years of effort, and of course, very significant numbers. But ShopRite and Capitec are both relatively new arrivals. We're talking in Capitec's case, just over a year, and in ShopRite Extra Savings case, 2 years? So just remarkable how they've managed to be able to roll these out at scale and get such phenomenal following. For me, another insight in the top 10, if you like, is the mix of food versus financial services, and then of course the arrival of the telcos, the MNOs. And this demonstrates how much the mass market are looking for data and airtime, and how critical data and airtime is in their world. And of course with Moya, but given that we're a data-free platform, we understand how much users aspire to having data more often. Of course, not many of them can afford to have data all the time, which is one of the reasons why our platform has grown so big. But there you go. In the top 10, MTN and Vodabucks coming in there.
Which we have never seen in the BrandMapp data in the top 10. I mean, they scrape into the top 25. So yeah, I'd noticed that you've got a real mix of brands in that top 10, rather than BrandMapp is dominated with 9 retailers plus 1 bank, which I'll reveal in a moment. So, and then the other question that we obviously asked that Brandon opened today's webinar with is the most loved or can't live without. And here are the results there again, dominated by ShopRite, and then straight after the Capitec. So it's not dominated by financial services as we saw in the BrandMapp data.
No,
but
exactly.
But there's again a real mix, as you say. You've got retail, Capitec straight in there, then retail again with Pick and Pay, then eBucks is number 4, and then Checkers Extra Savings here, and then again you start to see the telcos and Vitality coming through.
Yeah, exactly.
So fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I love these results. So thank you very much to you to contribute to this section. Great. So I'm going to move into the sort of leaderboards, and then I can see a few questions coming through. So I want to make sure we've got time for those questions. So we'll go fairly quickly through the leaderboards because they're fairly straightforward and self-explanatory. And again, they're going to be available on our website very shortly, so you can pore over them to your heart's content. So in the most used loyalty programs, we see take the first place once again, Clicks Club Card for the 4th time since we've been measuring this. So last year they were pipped by Pick and Pay, and now the 2 brands have switched again. And we've seen in the last few white papers that Pick and Pay and Clicks are switching, but Clicks are for the 4th time the most used loyalty program in South Africa. And then you've got Pick and Pay. Checkers Extra Savings, as Brandon said earlier, is a relatively new program and is coming straight in there. You know, Clicks and Pick and Pay are both, Pick and Pay is over 10 years old, Clicks well over 20, 25 years, I think. And then Checkers is 2 or 3 years old now and in at 3rd place. But credit to Discount Benefit, they've always been in the top 5. And they've only just been pushed out by Checkers Extra Savings. They were consistently in the top 3. So they're still really a highly used loyalty program. And then Woolworths W Rewards and Spar Rewards and Macro M Card hold the same positions, apart from they've been pushed down 1 by Checkers Extra Savings. And then credit to F&B eBucks, they're the only non-retail brand to break through in the top 10 of the most used loyalty programs. So I'll leave that there. Everyone can pore over these stats at their heart's content when they get their hands on the white paper. But we do start to see, I don't have time today, but I think next week when we unpack it slide by slide, we can start to pick up on some of the other new entrants, whether it's Capitec. Shell isn't new, but they're rising up through the V+, through the most used programs. Now, if we look at the I'm not going to go into now because Brandon covered it, but remember the second question after this is, okay, so which of these can you not live without? So we've already discussed that earlier today. So let's look at it sector by sector, because of the dominance of retail, I always just don't want to lose line of sight that in particular sectors, some brands are doing well in terms of most used, but don't seem to make it either onto the top 25 because retail is so dominant. So when we look at retail, there's nothing you haven't seen on the previous slide here, other than you don't see F&B eBucks in the top 10 because they're not retail. So this leaderboard is exactly the same as what you saw on the previous slide, apart from you don't have an F&B eBucks in there, and then the other brands follow. So as we said, Clicks Club Card at number 1, Pick and Pay, and then Checkers. So for financial services, forgive me, we included in the white paper a lovely quote from Clicks. So we had Melanie Van Roy speaking at the Leaders in Loyalty Summit, and she just talks about the war for wallet and the mind space of the consumer means that loyalty brands have got to reinvent themselves, and that's a process that Clicks have been through and are continuously going through. And I think that's how their result is leaving them at top as the top most used program. And then what we do see as well is the declaration from Melanie at Leaders in Loyalty that the Club Card program accounts for 8% of Clicks sales. So this is not an unimportant strategy for them. This is a high focus if it's across 8% of their sales. If we look at financial services, so F&B eBucks retain their number 1 position. But I think as we've said throughout today, we've got Capitec Live Better that is only just a year old, coming straight in there at number 2 in the BrandMapp data. And you saw in the Moya app data that in financial services terms, they were number 1. So, and then Vitality, Discovery Vitality, then Standard Bank UCount, ABSA Rewards, Nedbank Greenback, so the traditional banking brands. And then we've got Old Mutual Rewards program. It's been around for a few years and it's steadily steadily finding its position in the marketplace. Mr. Price Money Insiders has obviously got a retail lens on it as well, but it is run out of their money department, so it's not a pure retail play. And then the 2 other insurance providers from Momentum Multiply and Sanlam Reality. If we move into restaurants and QSR, this is a phenomenal result for Spur Family Card. They always are the first most used program for restaurants and QSR, but there's no doubting how far ahead they are in terms of the most used. I haven't seen the graph look like this before, so dominant. So congratulations. obviously we do run separately, as Brandon made mention of, at the Leaders in Loyalty Awards. We have the South African Loyalty Awards, and in that we saw Spur Family Card pick up the best restaurant loyalty program. But what we do see is Wimpy Rewards coming in just ahead of Kauai. So I know it's both saying 4%, but Brandon's data behind the scenes there will have ranked this by absolute results. So Wimpy Rewards is a relatively new program, only 3 or 4 years old. And I think Mike is on the call today. So congratulations to the team at Wimpy. So coming in at second, then Kauai, then Panarottis, then John Dory's, Seattle Rewards, Mug and Bean, Vida, Starbucks, and then Burger King. So Starbucks, I think it's the first time they've been mentioned in the top 10 as well. If we look at travel, also another result that's dominated more so by one brand. So I think Mike is also on the call today. So congratulations to Legacy Lifestyle, retaining their first position as the most used travel loyalty brand. Obviously, it does a lot more than travel. It's got a lifestyle lens to it. So it's a broad coalition program, obviously attracting a lot of different customer types, but it is primarily around the Legacy Hotel Group. And then you'll see there's very little other change here. In fact, it only goes down to number 9. We don't go deeper than that. In fact, if I remember correctly, there is no change here in terms of the ranking from last year, just this heavy dominance from Legacy. And then our last category is called Other. It sits a bit uncomfortably that we shove everything else into Other. But before I reveal it, the reason we have to do that, it's crazy to have a telco top 10 because there's only 2 and a little, 2 or 3 players in the market, or there's quite a few now FMCG brands that aren't retailers themselves. They're bypassing the retail process, but are offering money off on FMCG products or other products. So they're also coming into this other category. So if we look at other, again, My School, My Village, My Planet has been in first place for as most used for a few years. But a heads up here, we've got Shell V Plus right on their tail at number 2. So Shell has definitely risen up with some great usage stats. And then the telcos, so Vodacom, Vodabucks, and MTN Yellow Bucks. Stir Kinnikor, DSTV Rewards, again, a relatively young program. We've got Sorbet Society, New Metro, and then Snap and Save and Unilever Woohoo are both FMCG brands that are selling products but not linked to any particular retailer. So they're obviously starting to get traction, which is great to see. So that's the last of these slides in terms of those leaderboards. So as I say, at the end of this webinar, you'll be able to download the white paper. We do also look at a lens of the youth in the BrandMapp data. So there's a whole page on the youth of which brands are over-indexing and being used by a younger customer, because remember, in the overall loyalty usage, the younger customer tends to use loyalty less. So it's quite interesting to see which brands are managing to buck that trend. So before we go into the questions, I just want to say a big thank you from us as Truth. This is obviously probably the biggest piece of work that we produce for the industry every year. It's part of our portfolio of what we call the Customer Academy, which is a training platform which is managing to service hundreds of individuals, professionals who are trying to upskill in loyalty. So if you like what you saw today, we have a Customer Academy program, which is loyalty training, which covers obviously an awful lot more than the white paper, but it's part of that. And our core job is consultancy, helping brands navigate the world of loyalty. So you see a lot of me, you hear a lot of me, but I couldn't do this without my fantastic colleagues. So I've got Rowan and Lauren. That's the Truth team. So as we answer the questions, I'm going to leave on the screen the QR code for if you want to register for next week's page turn of the white paper. You might not feel like you need to listen to me talk it through when you've read it yourselves, but I'll be doing it anyway, even if it's just to myself. So I have it for prosperity. But I'm going to go into the Q&A now and then leave you to have a look at that. So let me open the Q&A. Got lots of great questions. So Pick and Pay's I'm just going to check if they're questions or just comments that, okay, I'm not going to actually talk about that one if you don't mind. The gender split is an interesting reflection of hunter-gatherers behavior. Actually, I think those words came out of Brandon's mouth. So when Brandon actually when he actually talked me through the results, I think he used exactly that term. Hey, Brandon.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a little predictable, and we do see it every year, and it's one of the first lenses we put on everything. So the interesting part about that was that the huge shift we saw last year in overall usage definitely had something to do with a lot more men using the mass retail programs. So that's why we put that question in about, I use the programs because my partner tells me to, because I had this theory that it was a whole lot of men who were suddenly had never gone shopping before, that their wives were sending out in the middle of lockdown, like saying, go look after the family and take the card with you. What card? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't think it was quite as hectic as that. But we've definitely seen, there's definitely a difference, obviously, in the retail programs versus financial. There's a huge sort of gender gap there. They're not gender agnostic, these programs, at all. So yeah, it's a very interesting lens, which again, you add into the white paper, the published white paper every year. Yeah.
Yeah. Great, thank you. The question, how is the question regarding South African customer loyalty preferences phrased in terms of the identifier? Are respondents who indicated swiping a card using debit credit cards and earning points, or using the loyalty card to interact with the program? So yeah, so we actually discussed this it's basically, without question, the financial payment card is going to be impacting the swiping a card, especially if you think about your results, Brandon, from the financial services brands dominating the program I can't live without.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so, definitely. I mean, it'll be inside that. I'm not sure that it fundamentally makes that much difference. I mean, the point is, you can pay with your cell phone these days. But the majority of people clearly still prefer swiping the card. I think it's a coverall,
And that's why we put into that question this year around swipe a digital card, and still we can't see, because of that, because you can use your payment on the phone. It's not making a difference.
Yeah.
A question, are Checkers and ShopRite split out? Can you only use Checkers at Checkers? So it's I don't know if I have anyone on the call from Checkers. I'm in the middle of looking at the Q&A, but it's one program. Well, it's two programs, obviously ShopRite and Checkers. I'm not 100% sure if the cards are interchangeable. Do you know, Nick? I'm not. Kia's raised their hand. If I can unmute you, Kia, hang on a second. Let me just make sure I get this right. Because Kia runs this program. Here she goes. She's raised her hand. Let me just do this for you, Kia. Forgive me while I find. Hey, Lauren's going to come and do it. Sorry, I'm trying to navigate while I've got the screen on too.
Oh, multitasking, Amanda. Go on.
This is where I'm not a typical woman. Allowed to talk. Okay, Kia. Kia, are you there? Can you answer that?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes. Go for it, Kia. Can you answer that question for whoever asked it?
In our program, the cards are totally interchangeable. We have one customer profile across both cards. The only difference is the graphic on the front of the card, but you can have one card across both programs and swipe at either a Checkers or a ShopRite. There are some benefits that are kind of linked to where you shop. So for our funeral benefit, if you shop at a ShopRite, you will get your points or your swipes counted there. For other benefits, if you shop at a Checkers. So, but yes, you use the same card across both.
Thank you. You're a star. Thank you for being on hand. I appreciate that. I'm going to mute you now just in case there's background noise.
Sorry, man. Thanks, and just to clarify, what's interesting in the data about that is that there's about an 80% crossover between ShopRite and Checkers. Okay, so about 80% of people who say who click ShopRite also click Checkers, so it's pretty much the same person. The other way around is not quite as big, so only 30% of Checkers people are recognizing that they are ShopRite users.
Okay, great.
Which makes total sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, there are the Checkers, the ShopRite shopper is probably more often to shop at a Checkers than a Checkers shopper is to shop at a ShopRite, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But nice insight.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a couple more questions. I've just changed the background on the screen. You can download the white paper for absolutely nothing on the Truth website, but if you do want a hard printed copy couriered to you, we're just asking for a nominal fee to cover the printing and the courier. So the QR code's on the screen if you want to order that. We'll be sending them out on Friday, and then we'll have another look next Friday in case there's any other orders, but otherwise we don't charge at all for it. Kia asked the question, is it possible to aggregate the BrandMapp and Moya data to get a single leaderboard? So for this year, no. We've had the discussion, but we were well into the research process before we were able to bring in Moya app. I think for next year, we'll be having that discussion to be able to see what serves the market best. So thanks, Kia, for that.
Amanda, can I add something to that?
Please,
the reason why I still think it's kind of important to put a bit of a divide there is that there's no doubt that there's a value proposition here in terms of disposable spend that is completely different at the top and the bottom of the market. And I think that the bigger your question, almost the less meaningful the answer becomes. Do you know what I mean? Because usage, it's like ShopRite's probably going to win everything for the next 30 years, you know, just by virtue of where it sits as a footprint. But whether or not the value of that program can be equated to something like eBucks with a much smaller base, but you know, 85% more spend. I don't know. It feels instinctively to me like it's best if we, for the time being, if we keep looking at two ends of the market, because the reality in South Africa is that's what we live in. Do you know what I mean? We've got 30 million adults basically surviving on 52% of the adult population in this country relies on a social grant. It's hard to try and combine these things and come up with something that's meaningful on a strategic level. So yeah, just my 2 cents worth, but we will be discussing that during the course of the year. I think it's fascinating what we managed to add with Nick and Moya, and it's like an amazing lens on it. And I think it's almost more interesting to see those two pictures than if we tried to Frankenstein it up, you know. Anyway, just my 2 cents.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Brandon. Are loyalty aggregators measured or not really, as they usually white label? Not too sure what the question means there. Are loyalty aggregators measured?
Possibly like a multi partner programs.
Yeah, we don't. Well, there are multi-partner programs in the results, like Legacy Lifestyle. I mean, eBucks, all the financial services programs are multi-partner. Jimmy, if you want to pop a question back in, I'll answer it. I just don't 100% know how to answer your question there. David, does WhatsApp have a role in the success of these programs? Without question, from our point of view, we're starting to see some phenomenal innovation coming through of programs using WhatsApp. You know, you can download a card often through WhatsApp. Clicks allow you to do that. Checkers ShopRite used WhatsApp very aggressively in their sign-up process for their programs. So we're seeing a lot of programs really start to use WhatsApp. So there's some great providers out there who can help get that channel working well. So yeah, definitely it has a role. Whether it has a role in the success of the program is to be measured, I guess. But I think you'll hear we heard from ShopRite and Checkers after Checkers launched with Extra Savings, how the WhatsApp channel was very important for their enrollment process. We have
if I can say also, we see that in our world, the connection between loyalty programs and Moya chat. And obviously chat is something that is familiar and regular, and if a brand is talking to you with the right kind of offers, you're going to respond to it a lot quicker than you will in a spammy SMS. We see it as well.
Yeah, great, thanks, Nick. So do instant discount programs like Varsity Vibe, accumulation of cashback rewards for school education programs like School Days, and purchase card cashback rewards programs like Cape Consumers Be Smart get incorporated into the survey? So every year we add on additional brands into the survey. I mean, Brandon's always saying to me, Amanda, we can't have 3,000 listed here because the respondents have to go through them. But the new programs that come through, we definitely do add. In fact, this year we added quite a lot, but what we did see is the new additions rarely made even sort of a 1% response rate, but that doesn't mean we don't keep adding them. So thank you for raising that. There are so many. So for example, the other day I picked up sorry, it tells you a bit about my lifestyle, but a chocolate whey powder thing. And they had their own little scan the barcode and have a loyalty program. We can't add every single loyalty program we ever come across, otherwise the survey won't be manageable from BrandMapp and Moya's point of view. But some brands there mentioned is great, thank you. Which rewards program have VAS services and how well are these services used? So obviously the Moya app and BrandMapp research doesn't get into how well every element of a program is used, although we do look at the benefit set, which is available in the white paper under the section under benefits. So VAS services could mean anything, you know, from if you look at some of the financial services programs they've got, you know, eBooks recently have announced a lot of their VAS activity, whether it's the entertainer app, whether it's emergency services. There's a lot of all of the banks actually have extra VAS products available that whether they wrap them into their loyalty program or part of their banking proposition is a different story. And some of those are measured if they really are a value add to loyalty. And then the info, stats, insights on staff rewards and incentive programs, they're not included in here. This is a consumer facing study, and the broader BrandMapp study is 100% consumer facing. Hey, Brandon?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we would call requiring a bespoke survey. But then the only thing that I would say inside of that is that, you know, employees are just people. And although within the corporate environment, obviously there might be very specific things, like if you have an espresso machine and a normal coffee machine and only certain staff are allowed to use an espresso machine, yes, I'm sure an in-house benefit that said if you do something you'll be allowed to use an espresso would be nice. But generally speaking, like, employees are just employees. So the list of benefits, as in terms of what people want in life out of loyalty programs, you could probably take that list, which is published in the white paper, and use it almost as a blueprint.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. We have the same question in B2B loyalty programs. So obviously some are bespoke to a B2B program, but we did a webinar last week about B2B loyalty, and at the end of the day, most of the users, they're actually humans who want to use loyalty programs. So yeah. Okay, I think I've answered everything. There's one last question come in and we have run out of time. So I don't want, on the question, program you can't live without, this is using the BrandMapp data. Was the question also posed to the Moya audience? Yes, Kier, it was. And it is in the white paper. In fact, I can tell you the exact page, but the same question was in the white paper. Page 47. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to finish the questions now. We've answered everything, I think. And just want to thank my partners in crime. So Brandon and Nick, thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for the discussion. And to everybody out there, thank you for listening. And it's been a lot of people online. It's been great, some great questions. And go online and download your white paper. It's available.